Dr. Linda Ncube-Nkomo, the CEO of the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund, joins us live now. Let me thank you so much for your time this evening. Of course, listening to what has come out and reading the report itself, really one just sheds a tear to think about the fact that it's World Children's Day today, and here's a report being tabled in such a manner. But let's start with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact it has had on poverty in children in South Africa.
Hi, Bongiwe, and thank you for having us on the show, and thank you to your listeners. So COVID-19 has impacted children in various ways. There's a lot of children whose homes lost income due to COVID-19, and so that's belt of poverty tightened for them. Then the children who lost parents or caregivers. And the thing with COVID is that those parents or caregivers were lost in a very short space of time. So it wasn't a situation where they get sick and progressionally get worse over the years. It was in a matter of days, they would have lost a caregiver. A lot of schooling was lost, and the lack of the ability to socialize, because we are social beings. So the ability to socialize was lost. And finally, we also saw children giving birth to children after being locked down with families. So COVID-19 has really taken us back in terms of some of the gains that we had made or could potentially have made as regard the overall well-being of children.
And listening to the interview we just had earlier, we talk about the homes also being a place of concern as far as children's safety is concerned. But looking at your report, it concerned me even further that schools, which sometimes could be seen as, places where children can be safe, they simply aren't.
The children are not safe at schools, and when you look at what makes them unsafe, it's educators inflicting corporal punishment on children, the verbal abuse that children suffer at the hands of educators sometimes is quite frightening. And then you also find that children are not safe from each other. So often a child that comes from a violent home is going to be a violent child in him or herself. And they then become a threat to other children. They even become a threat to educators. And so, but it all goes back to what's happening in the home for the most part. What's happening in the home of an educator, what's happening in the home of a child that affects their well-being at school. So it is frightening that in the home, in the school, in the community, children are not safe. And for the most time, they're not safe from adults who should be caregivers.
And, talking about the point you raised earlier on the shrinking of the incomes or even the loss thereof in some of these homes, you think about the fact that malnutrition is one of the big issues. And I mean, I'm thinking about under 5 mortality, for example, and also the issues around malnutrition. Some of these homes, when you think about the price of the food basket, a basic one is at around 5,000 Rand. And now these are children who come from homes with no income at all. How do we begin to tackle this? Because stunting is a serious concern. The fact that we're losing children to hunger is even a bigger one.
So we need to tackle it by bringing the role players that are in the food sector together. A couple of NGOs have already started the conversations 10 months ago with retailers, saying to them, can you forego the profit on 10 protein-dense foods that, if given to children, will give them a better chance in terms of their development? And those retailers are dragging their feet because it means profits are foregone. And so we really need to get to a point whereby what is given as a grant is sufficient to at least buy food for those families. And that can only be possible if the retailers, like I'm saying, come to the party and are prepared to say, if you go and shop, for example, in this supermarket, the price that you're going to pay is much lower, and be intentional about ensuring that those are supermarkets that can be able, that, lower income groups would predominantly go to shop at, because it's just not an acceptable situation that we can go to bed in a couple of hours and sleep soundly, whereas children have not had a meal today and something can be done about it.
And the quality of education as well, another issue that is raised in the particular report. But there's something for me that struck a chord. The fact that a lack of access to water and sanitation, a lack of, basic service delivery means that if there's no water, a child is going to forgo their time to study and going to fetch water, which is going to lead to all kinds of problems, not only just health-wise, but at the same time, they're losing out on important time to be kids and to actually be able to study for their exams as well.
And not only that, Bongiwe, when they're going to fetch that water that they need to fetch, there's a safety element to it. I mean, the report, you'd have seen in the report, the levels at which children are being kidnapped and disappearing is quite frightening. So, we just need to now get to a point where, like you say, children have got the space to be children, and let us, the adults, be the ones who ensure that the environments we create for them allow them to be children.